Before we get started, for everyone who is just on YouTube, I do highly recommend coming into the Discord. It will help you interact a little bit cleaner. And it's free, so come check it out. Might as well. Okay, it's fixed now, Sig. Nope, never mind. Now it's go back again. Now it's back again.
Yeah, I was just trying to fix audio. It's all good. Got it.
Okay.
Alright, I'll be right back.
Yeah, you're good. I think we'll probably wait, like I said, a little bit. All right. Well, we're still gonna give it a tiny bit of time before we really get going. For those on YouTube, like I said a little bit ago, if you're just joining, I do think it's highly beneficial for this to click the link in the description and get into the Discord. It's a lot easier for chat interaction that way, as well as being able to kind of like scroll through chat and see some of the posts from today as we go through these areas. Want to do this in probably like 45 minutes to an hour. And the main thing that I really wanted to accomplish today is just going through the majority of this kind of mid-afternoon sell-off and focusing on very specifically kind of the footprint in areas that were predetermined levels, right? So really looking at the order flow and how participants are positioned in these areas. The kind of reasoning for this is because on these days where we sit balanced and then trend really hard, I see a lot of people either A, trying to play counter trend, right, and just getting ran over and not being able to actually take advantage of our range expansion, right, of our actual price discovery. So one, how can we make sure that we're not playing counter trend in the wrong areas? What are some clues we can do to get on that? And the second main thing that I see a lot of people struggle with when we get these shifts is the ability to actually get in the trade in a right area, as well as the mindset of that trade. I think on big trend days, people get really butthurt if they are, they get in a position and they don't capture the whole move, right? And your job as a trader is not to sit there and capture the entire move, right? Your job is to find your setups, areas of interaction, and trade your playbook plays, right? If we're entering in a good area, it then allows us to leave those runners where we're going to capture the majority of our points, right? But really holding size for larger degree moves is not going to be beneficial to your long-term success. As you get more comfortable, right, with your playbooking plays and more confident, we can add size to that, which then allows you to hold a larger runner relative to a less confident play. But like I said, the main focus I want to do is how can we see what type of interactions are we seeing at levels of interest that can indicate, okay, this is going to be a good reversal zone, right? Or this is only a dead cat, which I will use a lot today just because we have a bearish example, right? And we see this really strong re-offer lower for continuation. And then what does that look like on our next leg? Do we have any like overall comments, questions, concerns on kind of that overview or the kind of objective for today? I think, like I said a little bit ago, a lot of you are going to get the best out of this by kind of just sharing what you're seeing on the screen, and we can talk about it then as it's occurring in real time. I'll put it on like 1.5 times speed, so it won't be a 1-for-1, but there will be a lot of kind of downtime, right, as we're watching. So the more commentary we can get and questions, the more beneficial it's going to be for you guys as well. So yeah, anything kind of off the get-go that people have comments, questions, concerns for? So we got one typer. And as Ty is typing, how did most people do this afternoon? Were people able to capture a decent chunk of points on the sell-off? Or people mostly sidelined? What is the kind of overall consensus of this afternoon? I am not going to comment on size too much, Ty, if you are actually doing those things. All right, but no outside comments on kind of how people did this afternoon? Do we all capture everything? I did not. I can tell you that much. So Flex had a couple nice trades. I don't close too early. Once again, it's something that I don't believe in. If you're trading your setup, you've closed into your setup. Whatever happens after that is not part of your setup. It's not in your control. But like I said, we'll look at some areas today about how we can see things to hold runners for longer or look for good re-entries. All right, before we get into this and start playing, I want to do a quick review of things that we're going to be primarily looking at and what are those patterns that we're going to see, right? So for those who are familiar with Footprint or are not, what this is doing is it is showing you the transactions on the bid or the ask. So we can assume that, for example, this 113 contracts traded on the bid, someone jumped the spread from the ask to fill those individuals, right? So we are only seeing passive limit orders on our footprint, but we can assume that for those limit orders to be filled, someone executed a market over the spread. So we read it diagonally. Same idea here on the ask with this 111. We can assume that buyers pushed over the spread, right, and came up into our 111. With our profile on the right, right, these red and green lines are going to be tracking your delta by price. So the difference between buy side and sell side aggression via those coming over the spread off that logic that I just shared. Right, so we can see right here at 52.85, we have negative 3,000 deltas. We can see in these last kind of handful of traded times, we are nowhere near that. That means we can look left and see, here we go, right? The bid came up, someone took it. So those are kind of your precursors. What are some things for those in chat too that we look for in trend? What type of action by participants? Obviously, someone is more aggressive, right? But what are some things that you guys look for identifying these kind of breakdown and strong trends? What are some things that we just overall knowledge that we can utilize? So I think this is very good sauce as other people are typing with that second question, but your second paragraph here. So when we sold off, you got too wrapped up to downside targets being supportive and not wanting to go short because of that and accepting that it was a larger degree like volatility movement type of day where we're getting expansion as well as price discovery, right? So there's some things that I want to work on today by observing these areas where we're seeing the offer really drop, right? And that's kind of the answer to that previous question I had, where in trend, we're going to see one side really willing to sell lower prices, right, in a bearish trend or buy higher prices in a bullish trend. I know that's very obvious, right? That is what trend is. But in the moment, it sometimes becomes muddy because we impart our own personal bias onto it, right? Or we say like, oh, this level should be responsive. right? And when we say this level should be responsive, that doesn't mean it's going to be, right? So coming into the setup with a bias, it's okay. I don't want to say it's not okay. What's not okay is when you trade that bias instead of trading what's given, right? And that's where most people get stuck up. We talk that a lot about, like, that type of ego trading. So main thing that I want to focus on today is these areas of interest. And yeah, like I said, seeing this absorption, seeing the offer drop, obviously we know is a very extreme bearish trend day. So I'm going to start letting this play. You see where we're trading right now. This is at 105 Central, so 205 Eastern. If you live on the East Coast, you can do your own math. This is into this Globex POC area, right? So on ES. Quick run through the charts. So I want to focus on the footprint and seeing these areas of acceleration, what it looks like. What I want your guys' eyes to be doing is watching the DOM, and I will try to call it out the best I can to see, okay, where is liquidity being offered, right? Where should we trade to? And what type of trade happens as we reach that level, right? Down on the left, we have the Russell. Top left, we have NQ. Candlestick charts just there for kind of looking for confluence or divergence. But I really want your focus to be on participants on ES. And where are we taking? Where are we reoffering? How can we use these levels of liquidity to understand, okay, we need to regain this trap trader, or we saw a very aggressive trader here, right? What's going to happen next? So, all right, I will play it. Please continue to ask questions. But just off the start here, right? We understand this 83 being yesterday's Globex POC for just the Globex session, right? And we see that we had an aggressive seller who got trapped way early in the morning, right? What else do we see? Well, liquidity here into 80. So we have an area to watch for, right? And this is an area where a lot of people are going to be looking to go long because of everything you guys just talked about, right? This was a supportive area before. How do we know if it's going to be supportive again, right? Or currently? So what did we see there almost instantly? What are the first couple of things that you guys have seen as we watch just this first, 30 seconds since I pressed play? Anybody notice anything? Yeah, we'll kind of crawl around this. So a couple of things, right? Like I said, 83, go look on your charts. This 80 to 83 was an area that we were very, very interested in, right? 83 quarter was yesterday's high. We had Globex POC at 83. We have node structure through 80. Okay, yesterday's value high was at 80. This is a big area where if we're going to catch a low, it makes sense for this area to be supportive, right? It's not wrong to go into this area with a bias of saying, this is a probable zone where if we're going to bid, it will occur, right? So something I talk a lot about for executing trades is this idea of having a setup and then a trigger, okay? So all of this kind of like charting, looking at past areas of interest, right? This is dictating your setup. And coming into it with a bullish bias into this area is fine. But we need to establish a trigger. And the trigger is going to be for a reversal. It's almost always very straightforward, right? We see multiple markets trading together, counter trend to what we've been trading. We see a trader get off sides, right? And a really strong desire for the counter trend participants to raise value. So we identified as we started into 83, we had liquidity into 80 on the bid, right? Not a ton, 300 contracts, but more than what was around it, right? We had Russell here. We can see with this breakdown trading into a structural low. And when we zoom out, very similar kind of area with our Globex highs here, right? As well as with NQ in a very similar structure with this node edge. Okay, so I have an area that's a setup, right? Now I know for my counter trend trigger, I need a seller to get offside. I need a strong desire to raise, right? We come through, we take. The second you see this failure to get back over and this ask drop down, this is the ask dropping down, right? 1,500 contracts go set to be filled on limit at 80. A seller here is very serious and they want to get filled, right? They believe that this is the best possible price in this movement that they can get filled, right? So there are no longs to be offered until we push up, test these guys, and can support this. We saw this very similar down into the lows off 40 right in the afternoon, which we will get to 40 points below. But understanding, okay, I came in with a bullish bias. This should delete all of your bullish bias until we come back up and get back in. Right? Seeing this type of interaction tells me my initial bias was wrong. Does that make sense for people just breaking it down like this and how to catch this real time? Like I said, I don't think it's wrong, and it is not wrong to expect buyers in this area. Buyers were here. We can see them and that they tried to push back up, but it was not obviously enough. We did not see Russell hold. Russell breaks down, NQ breaks down, ES breaks down, all through important pivots. All right. The same idea as when we're trying to trade counter trend in these areas. And we want to see that full market participation. We want to see a seller get trapped. We want to see buyers become very aggressive. All of those things apply for the continuation breakdown move, which is what we saw. All markets are trading together. A buyer is now offside. Sellers are willing to get aggressive and push, right? So never forget about the second side. But now we have a very interesting area to work off of, right? With this 80. We can observe, can buyers come up into the 80? Can they take and reclaim? If yes, right, now we have a trigger for our initial thesis. If no, we have to look down into further areas of liquidity. Right, we can see 75 being offered below. There's some interest sitting. Right, we had some trapped sellers based on our delta by price previously in this session. This was a Globex. Watch what happens. I'm going to pause again really quick. Notice, same kind of idea here. Someone's coming down to take, right? We're seeing the absorption. It's not super large, it's not crazy, but there are buyers here on the limit and they're willing to push back. Right? We can see that the offer traded on the offer is larger. That means buyers are coming in. Once again, if we cannot reclaim and put a higher high through our past area of liquidity, right, these buyers just get trapped and absolutely stop ran. So let's watch what happens. Can they do it? What are we seeing again? What's happening on basically every like minute here? Remember, this is 1.5 times speed. Pause here again. Same idea. The bid is trying to step into these areas, and the second that's liquidity filled, it's destroyed, right? Stop ran through, sweeper, right? We can see these sweepers here through 69, right down into 67. That's this trade right here, 69 through 67. Bid is trying to step in. If this bid is not responsive up and over, understand that we have two things happening here. Right, one could be large seller closing, in which case we will not see a bounce. Or two, if we see this happen and we can't trade up and over, we're going to have a trap buyer, stop run, continuation. So until we see this type of action of a supportive bid step in and we reclaim and we see this move up, we're selling. We're going. You look for your next area on your higher time frame, right? Which in this case, and where we're positioned here, we have 65 as our as yesterday's value low, and then we have node structure far below into 55, right? So we have two areas to look at once again for a setup and to take risk off, right? The 70 is yesterday's POC, 65 yesterday's value low. So we have a 5-point pocket here that we can once again look for, but anytime we trade down into this and reoffer, we have to look for that sell. And these are your opportunities to get in, right? And this is kind of what you were talking about on your post above, Sauce, right? Where you're like, well, I kept leaning on these areas of supportive and not seeing what I wanted, so then I wait, right? Instead of waiting, once you understand that we're going to keep selling until this happens, and on the small time frame, one time framing down, you should sell and you can run tight stop, right? Or go really low size with a wider stop. And understand here, okay, if we can't get back over 65 or 75, excuse me, we're going to keep selling. The other important part here, right, is look at this offer willing to drop. And pay attention to this as we continue to trade down. If we get any bounces up towards where liquidity is being offered on the ask, the bid slows down and no one's willing to take. If that happens, buyers are not trying to raise value. They're just not interested in it. Right? Do those principles make sense? Hopefully they do. A good trick or tip on Tradeovate 2 is these numbers. People sometimes ask what these numbers are. This is the total amount of resting liquidity. So right now there's 1,300 more contracts offered on the ask than are sitting on the bid. Much more desire for sell side to get filled, right? If buyers are aggressive, they can come clean this up and take it up and raise value, right? I'm not saying that cannot happen and that this imbalance is a sign that we're going to continue down, because there's a lot of time you see this imbalance, but then it gets taken, right? But it's more the principle of understanding, okay, sellers are sitting on the limit, they're fine selling lower. And pay attention to these big chunks of liquidity following us down. Watch this as we trade back towards it. Another spot here, right? Bid is continuously trying to hold into 70. Sellers are fine taking it. We have to see, can we maintain this? We talked about 75, right? We want to see this auction trade up and out and hold above. If not, we'll see continuation. We also understand the 71 with our big liquidity take. If we trade under and hold, that's my short entry, scalp-wise. Right? All these buyers are then off sides. We should continue down, as well as these. Two pockets here. So this is an attempt to hold and an attempt to lift. We're trading back in this pocket. Notice, once again, liquidity is fine on the ask. They took their contracts into 71 and it, boom, comes right back into 75. Why is 75 important? Well, we've identified this as our primary breakdown. First absorption, right? We have a mini auction occurring here. I think there's this is the point where a lot of people are going to try to be participating with this. And we can see that, obviously, right? I know this was not a huge degree move. But once again, understanding the second that we can't hold this guy who took, right? We're seeing pressure back down into this individual willing to absorb. If we do not see a very strong, almost instant bid and raise, this should continue. Same idea sell side, right? Same idea if we're trending up. Exactly, so something, and we can kind of see the structure here, right? But yeah, same idea, right? We have our node structure that's being formed. This is what's forming our node structure, right? And these participants are putting in our edges as well as our POCs of these areas. This can also help you if you are attempting this as a long for the catch of where to put your stops, right? If you're looking for an entry here and we break the low, these guys aren't willing, right? You can try again, right? You can take your 2-point stop, but understand that most likely lower high, lower low, we're still trending. It is what it is. What do we notice here as we continue to move down? Look at ask just piling in. Lots of liquidity. People are like, yeah, come on, bid me. Come up to me, and then they're going to slam. They need liquidity. Sellers are obviously in control here, right? We're about 2,000 contracts more offered on the ask. And this is what you need to look for when you're like, can we hold this area, right? Can we take this liquidity and support above? Because what's happening right now is we trade into it and then just push back down away. We saw that with our buy side absorption areas here, right? Now, as we trade under 65, I really want to put importance on 65. Okay, 65 was yesterday's value low for the New York session. I'm actually going to pause this. And I will even put a box on it. We'll do 63 half to 65 half. Okay, watch the interactions in this zone. So 65 quarter was yesterday's value low of RTH, right? So another area where it's like, this makes sense for us to see responsive buyers, right? Now let's watch how participants actually interacted in this area. Keep an eye on the DOM too. What are sellers doing? What do we notice there? Anything? It's still up there, right? We had an area people attempted to absorb. We push back in. Were we able to make a higher high off of this breakdown? No. Do we have buyers pushing into these highs? 64 3/4, 64 quarter, 65, 64 4, 64 3/4. See if I can even speak English. Yes. Right? Were they able to lift? No. All right, now I have a very important zone that has higher time frame confluence, right, from yesterday. We have an area where in that area of higher time frame confluence, we saw buyers attempt, right? What else happened? Are big sellers down here anymore? Waiting for liquidity? No. But do we still see sweepers coming over and pushing sell side value down? Yes. Okay, cool. Now I have an area that's a very clean pivot, right? Two-sided trading. When I talk about an area and I say like, oh, there's two-sided trading occurring here, what I'm looking for specifically on the footprint is an equal kind of amount of aggressive buyers and aggressive sellers willing to interact at essentially the same price, right? Let's go review this. About 800 contracts, 550. There's obviously a lot more aggression pushing into the bid here than coming back up over the spread to try to push out, right, in this pocket. See here, 200 contracts, here, 400 contracts, right? A lot of these large areas where we're seeing these big participants are very one-sided. When we look down into here, right, there's about a 40 contract difference. And there's about a 50 contract difference, right? There's two-sided trading occurring here. So we have an area of, it might be minuscule, but tight balance for a small amount of time. And that's how I like to look at this. That's a decision point. It's on a higher time frame level. It's a major higher time frame level, testing yesterday's value low, right? Can we hold within yesterday's value or not? If we're going to, what do we expect to see? And why do we expect to see it? Well, we would expect to see like very aggressive buyers, right? Why? Well, if we're going to hold what was considered value yesterday, the buy into the previous day's value low will be the best price for buyers then. Right? Does that make sense just based on like basic like auction principles of like understanding here's our value. We expect to see very aggressive buy side activity if they still view that as value today. If they don't, right, and sellers still think it's priced too high, that area will be a strong resistance, right, as well as a spot for all of the buyers from yesterday to now be trapped, right? When we get into these higher time frame buy or sell value areas, right, we have a potential to trap a lot of people. A lot of people go off sides. That's why it's established as value, right? These are the areas where most people were trading. Most people thought this was a good price. All right, I'm going to continue and we want to watch this play down and pay attention to our retests in this area. Because this is the point where you can miss, and as this plays, right, you can miss this breakdown. You can be unsure about this into this 80-83. That's fine, right? As we come down through yesterday's value, now is when you should be looking for that second leg or that reversal, right? We can go into it with a bias. That's fine as long as your trigger is not biased, right? So how do I get in the mid move, right? Well, this is it. And this is the point in today when I think the actual probably best short was offered. Notice how into these lows too. We talked about this very quick, right? Sellers are pushing down. Buyers are much more quick to push back up. Makes sense where we are, higher time frame, right? Under yesterday's value low. Buyers who are interested in buying are going to view this as a good price. If we can reclaim into the previous day's value, people should be very familiar with these node plays, right? So we look up and come back in, this is a good long spot. As we come back into here as well, right? And we can't get over and bid and this offers, this is a perfect short spot and we should expect to trade a range low then, if not look for a lower low. So this is the perfect opportunity to set up, okay, I now have a binary if then setup, right? With a secondary reaction to play off of. Does that make sense so far? And once again, when you're looking at this real time, you're like, this makes sense for places for a buyer to be. I agree, right? This also makes sense for our continuation. Why? Well, all the reasons we just went over. I have my pocket. Now I just wait and see what happens. If we trade in and trade back out, we have a short down into our lows. If we trade through and support, we can take the long back out of the range. Where are we looking? Well, back up into this previous structure, right? Looking at 70, then into 75, and then 80. Right? It's nice today that it's just 5-point chunks, but we know where people attempted, where people got trapped, right? We can see our node structure here. We can play, can we get through the low volume node and back up into this node? Right, through the low volume node, back up into this node. Notice the bid is trying to move up. We have not seen this yet, right? 700 contracts here, 600 contracts here. We're seeing the push on tape, sizes coming up and over. Notice the offer drop down. This is very important here. Our first kind of big take up and over back into our zone, right? Bid is trying to move up. Like I said, long side is okay here if we come up and over and rebid. If we fail any of this chunk of liquidity from previously and now, we easily target range lows. We get a 9-10 point trade, and this is where you can hold a runner for that break. I really want to stress this area as the mid move area. We see basically the same thing occur later in the day again. I think so, and kind of to add on to that sauce, like you have to remember that each node is its own auction, right? So as we go into these higher time frames and start looking at weekly and like, you know, I post monthly profiles all the time. That yes, there's still like your monthly value low, value high, POC are still important, right? But the size and time frame of traders who are caring about those levels is going to be a lot more wishy-washy in terms of like how quick and how much room on either side of the level for it to accept or not. So I would way be more focusing on your shape. And basically once something is tested like in terms of value like once or twice, I'm done. All right, I'm going to pause again really quick. So if we're using our footprint and marking these levels, of liquidity. We can get even more. I will get even more kind of like resolute with some of this stuff. Where we see this guy. And if you have questions on why I'm pulling to these areas, please ask away. Let's see if I can actually do it. Okay, so we have like two pockets here, right? Where the bid attempted to hold and then was willing to get aggressive up and over. As we trade through these, right? When you pull your fixed profile, this is going to be pretty balanced node. Right? If we're on TradingView, we can pull our fixed profile on here and understand, okay, this is probably going to be about our value high. We can see our node structure overall here too. Right? If we trade through this edge, where are we going to trade? Well, we look for the lows. Right? And understanding, okay, a reclaim here for a bullish trade is fine. I want to reiterate, there's nothing wrong looking for that. What's wrong if you interact without that push and rebid? Because all of this is done is re-offered and retrapped all of these guys. Right? And the second we get under this level of liquidity, what did we see happen? Sweepers come in. Look at these sweepers. Right? Pushing into and against, and then boom, just flushed. Understanding that if these participants cannot get back on side on the bid, that we will trade to the bottom of our range. This is an amazing short setup. And like I said a little bit ago, we saw this happen like 3 times in the afternoon auction. Where, yes, you can be like, oh, I don't know, is the trend going to end? This is an important area. What's happening? I don't know, right? Just breaking it down and not even looking at the rest of the day and just taking this node, you have a really good short.
Hey, Mario,
Mm-hmm.
do you mind sharing this layout right now? So if anyone wants to follow along, they can.
Sure.
You had someone ask in regular chat. Sorry, I didn't mean to hurt your
No, you're
flow.
fine. I mean, there's not. I mean, at this point, we just sell.
Yeah, yeah.
And we look for yesterday's low, 47. And yeah. So for the individual who asked, I will get it to you when we are finished up, so I can stay somewhat focused. So Aram says, I'm gonna pause here. Okay. We walked over why and how we can get into this short, right? And I just mentioned it, but I was like, what's our next major area then? Okay, well, if we lose yesterday's value low, what's another good spot to look? Well, how about yesterday's low, period? Right? That's our next major level. Is there confluence there? Ah, yes. That was Tuesday's Globex value low in this zone. Right? We have node structure from Tuesday's New York session in this zone as well. Right? Now I have a next area, and obviously this is faster than normal, but this was all called on voice as well. You had charts to utilize this stuff. But where do I hold a runner to? For me, how I'm trading this, I'm closing now. Right? Where am I looking for a reoffer? Well, the bottom of the range of our previous range, right, where all of these buy side participants are now off sides, right, as well as an attempted raise of buy side value here. We can see it on our delta by price. It's a low volume node edge as well. Now I have a next reoffer spot. If we trade through this, then this 47.50 is my new 63 to 65. Same reason as before, right? We're just, what's our next area where we saw buy side excitement and interest previously? Is it still there? Can we reclaim it if we trade beneath? If the answer is no on all of those questions, we look for that sell side aggression as we test back in and understand that that's going to be our next leg down of like our drop base drop, right? That's what we're doing. Drop, base, drop. Are we going to base? Then do we come back up? Do we drop, right? Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to kind of. So Aram says the thing is that on any other day, trying these dip buys areas is totally valid, but given this particular context with the condition shift earlier in the week and today's failure of buyers, the dip buys are not just valid, it's all sell. And I agree. Like I said, I don't think it's wrong to come in with the directional bias of counter trend into these areas. You just need to be objective with what you're actually seeing participants do. And I think that's the second part of your statement, right? Where are buyers failing? Are we just shifting value down? Right? Like if yes, like we can't look for longs. You cannot look for a long until a strong higher high with a higher low off a previous pivot. It just is what it is, and accepting that is huge. I also want to dictate the idea of buying the dip buy, because even in these areas, like you should not be like executing a long if we have not traded the price yet. I think a lot of people will like have limits sitting in these areas to try to hit a knife catch low tick. And when we're seeing this level of aggression, you're just going to get ran over. You might get lucky, but you need to see the shift in actual participants. And that's really what I'm trying to highlight here. Right? A good example would have been this 47, right? Does it make sense for us to find buyers at yesterday's low? Yeah, probably. That makes sense. I think that logic is fine. Did we? Well, we found a pocket of people with their limit sitting right here. And what did sellers do? They're like, thank you, flunk, right? You being, I don't know the right word because I don't want to say patient because it's not about being patient per se. It is in terms of waiting for the level. And it's not about being passive because you need to be watching more intently on these type of days to see these interactions. But it's the idea of letting the knife catch or the acceleration, you not participating in that, and instead participating in the structure, right? And you need to be very precise with how you are participating within that structure. So it's this like passive in nature, but not an execution type of mindset. Where, like I said, I am sure, and you can see it here, as we approach yesterday's low, people were like, yo, yeah, I'm going to buy yesterday's low. Right? They had limits sitting there and they got ran over. On these days, and even on sell side, like it's obviously slightly more difficult to do this sell side, but in a bullish trend, it'll be the same thing. But trading, trying to place a trade on a price that has not been traded yet is just a recipe for disaster, and you should be focused more on current structure. Like I said, there are plenty of times you can get lucky. There are plenty of times when, yes, it works within a framework, but for most people on these type of days, I think that's how people are getting ran over. All right, we will continue this. As we go, I'm just going to remark this though. On a circle. All right, we understand 47 here, yesterday's low. We understand there was an attempt. And now we have our new strong reoffer. We have a, what did we do? Drop base, drop base, drop. Okay, if we can recover a base, Talked about this in 40. We can recover this base. And I'm going to pause again. Now, a couple of things as we continue this. Same ideas. If we can recover the base, we can look up. If we trade in and reject the basing, we should expect a lower low. What do we notice here? Does this look different than what we've seen before? Does this area look different to this order flow here? Or to this? Does it look the same? Less of a taper? Yeah, I agree. Or chunky? Yeah, we actually have a seller offside. Right? And an instant take of liquidity. This looks more like a low than what we've seen. But it does not mean anything. It means nothing to me. Nothing. Until we see this. Right? Until we reclaim the space and look up towards here, where we have these trap buyers, as well as yesterday's low, important area, this means nothing. Okay? Do these principles make sense? If people have questions like why I think this looks different, please ask away. But once again, very similar to up here, we now have an area where there is potential for a long side scalp. That's fine and makes sense. But there's also potential to stay with trend and not have the trade counter trend and still look for this lower high short and then a range break below. I'm going to take these off just to clean up the chart and go back to play. And this will probably be like the last kind of like move that I want to showcase today. Just for time's sake as well, we're almost into an hour here. So we're testing into this base now. Remember what was drawn? We want to see base, the bid move into the base and then get a strong test back into our last drop off the drop base. Exactly. So Sauce just typed that low can be like a prepare to look for a short opportunity back into trend, right? And I'm gonna just because I don't want this to go too much. Same idea here. This made sense as an area to look, right? It made sense on higher time frame. It made sense structurally. I know of a binary outcome. Do we push up? Does bid move up and hold? Or do we look in, reoffer, and trade through the liquidity that caused this first initial push up? We're doing the same thing. Move this over a little bit.
I just wanted to add one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Off of the 48s, and that offer in 46, 48, we then see a push below where we saw that bid step in at 34s. And at the same time, NQ broke back below, broke back underneath Tuesday value high. So now it's at an offer point. So you have a secondary entry by seeing weakness across the board where we've now broken back into a previous auction, and you can start to look for NQ to fill back down to value low off the failure at value highs. So it's like you have ES and NQ both at a vital area, and it's either they bid here, or if we break back into a previous auction, we expect, if that value high doesn't hold, to at least move down to that value low. And that's that secondary chart I just posted.
I mean, that's a really good point. I haven't been like paying attention to these trades too much, but it's the same. Are we trading together or not? right? It's the same thing we do every day when we're balanced, when we're not. Notice here, as we look back into this base, the bid is moving up, right? If this can hold, if these participants can hold, we should expect a push to the high. And if we see a strong response there, we should look back into this 47, 48. Look at that seller. Now we have, once again, an awesome opportunity where we've looked back into this auction. We have someone who is selling on the limit off sides. We have an area above to look for, structurally higher time frame, as well as with immediate order flow. We have structure dictated with immediate order flow. A look below target. Right? We're set up here. Now it's just up to us to watch the signals and understand, okay, can we push these highs? If yes, okay, you got a 5-point trade up. Do we reoffer here? Yes, cool. 5-point trade down, potentially 7 to 8-point trade, potentially 15 points on a runner. And then a break, you let it go. I've just set up a 3 pivot structure that's the same way to trade as when we're trading. Do we reclaim value low? Yes. Okay, let's trade the POC. Can we reclaim POC? Yes. Okay, let's trade the value high. Do we reject value high? Yes. Okay, let's look back to POC. The principles are the same. Exactly the same. Do we see the same level of vigor that we saw on this take at 40 here back into our previous day lows pivot? Bid is attempting to move up. Who's aggressive? If you're paying attention to footprint as well, and even like with your structure, we can set up these smaller areas too that can help you confirm. Look at this pocket. And I talked a little bit ago about two-sided trading. This is pretty balanced. A buyer was like, I will take here, and a seller was like, I will take. A two-sided trade. So, trade below this, right? If we're unsure about catching, quote unquote, catching a knife on the sell side of the pivot, we understand if we trade back through this, we fill this imbalance, we can take our scalp with 2 targets below. Well, multiple, more than 2, but 2 immediate targets. So we're just trading between these guys. What happens the second we look below? Can we reoffer? And the second you see that lower reoffer, you should expect a sweeper to step. These are the points where I'm like, I need to see aggression now, or I'm expecting a side to fail. Do not reoffer. We expect a lower low. Where to? 40. Same thing. This reoffers. We should trade through 40. Trade down into this 37 area. If we reclaim, we can look back up. If you can understand where these participants are sitting and where the push and pull is, there is no middle of the trend anymore. There's just auction pivots. I have to scroll up. This was a trade I took. I think this was the one we were actually talking about, was it not? Let me find it. Scroll, scroll, scroll. No, my trade was just after this. No, it wasn't. It was right here. No, I actually took this. I'm pretty sure it was at this point. So entry was 39 as we came underneath here and then closed 32. So, and then closed 30s. I think I'm in the short right now.
Yeah, you are. You have one left, I think is what you said.
Yeah, and I know here I can pause. I have to like obviously log into a different account to pull it, but I know I took one short up here that covered and then hit break even, and then I waited for this breakdown, um, and the reoffer. But I mean, there's the trade of a picture above with the trades on it. And something down into here, you can see it does 35. I closed one into 35, and then off the lower reoffer, I'm back in with a single contract at 35 for this last move down. But it's the same principle here, Sauce, right? Where, okay, we have this auction, and we trade below it, and then we reclaim it, and we trade back up. And if we trade back into this auction, right, I'm going to look for a continuation out of it. Why? Well, if there was enough aggressive buy side in this area, we would hold here. This reoffer should not occur. We should see buy side push up and out.
No
Right?
shift
We
of value
should
has
hold
taken
higher.
place.
What did that? What did you say?
I said no shift of value has taken place.
Yeah, like there's this. This will be our higher low.
Yeah.
If we're going to move the buy side value up, and then we'll look for a higher high. If we don't see it here, I have to come back and test this dude. It just has to happen, right? It can come into here, sure, but it'll be very obvious with how quick it is, right? Then the trade doesn't play to my target, and that's fine. I don't care. I'm still capturing points on the way down. Trade was still successful in terms of relook into this auction and look for a lower low. Why? Well, everything I just explained, right? We look down, we look back up. Can we put a higher high in over our pivot? No. Do we reoffer? Yes. Okay, we should make a rotation. Right. Notice also in this area, what are we trading together via markets? Is Russell breaking down? Yeah. The Enki breakdown? Yeah. Right. And with Sig just typed, same thing here, right? Do we get back into our lows of our auction here? Right? Or does this get reoffered? If this gets reoffered, buy side value does not want to go up. We're going to put in another lower low. If this does hold, where do we look? Well, we can look up into 40 to 42. And if that holds, we can look back into 47. Right? And that gives me like so many opportunities to make, even regardless of side, right? Sell side is still preferred here. Why? Well, we're putting in lower highs and lower lows. Our trend is still down. Doesn't mean you can't take long side scalps in here. You just need to understand that you're playing counter trend and sellers are much more aggressive and you can get swept out. But if you just wait until you have structure after selling, we can still continue and make more structure. But this structure allows you to make these binary decisions with a defined risk. And on expansion days, you're still capturing 5 to 6 points per contract. And if you do that for 2 rotations, like it doesn't matter that you missed the 20-point drop. Right? Because the points captured is the same. It's just much more structurally sound within a playbook that you understand.
We're not dependent on market volatility.
Yes, yeah, that's a perfect way to
You
the
have
way to say it,
mechanical
actually.
trades.
Yes. And that's like I said at the beginning of this, I see a lot of people struggling where they're like, I missed the first move, like I didn't catch the first 5 points of the 100-point drop, so I just didn't participate.
And if
And
you
it's like, well, go ahead.
no, it's just like Sauce, you were saying earlier, like my keep getting stopped out. It's like, okay, well, if you're trying to capture like the larger volatility, you have to have wider stops and trade less sides. But if you have this kind of breakdown and you understand where our pivots are in the actual auction, you can still trade your size. Like our invalidation levels are very clear. So nothing, but it's mechanical, right? Like everything that Mario's been going through are very mechanical setups.
Hard part of this too is like, let's just do a hypothetical that you try to take a long on this reclaim and we come down, right? And you take your 2-point stop. A lot of people want to hold their stop instead of just like re-entering. And these are the type of days where you have to take that L and be really precise with your entry. Understand like if it doesn't hold here, like it's gonna come down. It has to. And if it doesn't, that's fine. I'll catch it on a reclaim up. Right? Where it's like I'm trading here or I'm trading here. Right? And dictating that for yourself, like for a long, is really gonna save some headaches, specifically counter trend. The same thing happens with trend, right? Where it's like over here, right? We either sell here or we sell here. And there's no point in entering here and holding to here. Take your paper cut, take your couple points. It sucks. It's okay. Wait for the next setup. Same idea here. And this, we'll let this last leg play, and then I'm probably gonna call it. There's a lot of information. People, I would really want you guys to like go through and slow down the stuff and really look at, you know, the details of this more so than I could even capture, like kind of ripping this and doing it live. But if we offer here lower, all these buyers are screwed, right? And we should put a lower low out of range. Where? Well, we were looking down to ultimately 20 to 18, right? What this does is, okay, 40s can't go bid, right? We look for the range break, and we're still capturing 5 to 10 points then. 40s do go bid. Okay, can we come back up over 42? Yes. Well, I can try to play with this little counter trend back up to our 45, 47, right? Or wait for the short and look for the rejection, or wait for the push through and the trade out. So if you don't feel comfortable here, you don't have a good read, that's fine. You should then be focusing on where is my next area of interest? Where's the next spot that I want to trade and why? And you can dictate specifically on trend days. It's just like, can we reclaim a past auction? If yes, something has shifted. Where are we going to trade to our next auction, right? Just node to node to node. Here's our 40 reoffer again, right? We come down under, we're testing the bottom. We can't get back into this auction. We need to go search for liquidity. We target the lows, but ultimately a lower low because we're trending. And trend is lower high, lower lows. Where's our lower low to? Right? Utilize higher time frame structure. Yeah, and I think like Sauce, that's one of the like skill sets that you develop over time that really has an influence on your P&L. So like it's a lot of time where I was gonna average down on a loser, but just cut the original trade, and then the second entry was way better without the extra drawdown. And then that also allows you to, if your initial thesis was correct, but your timing was off, and the area of your initial thesis ends up being substantial, you can add size there, and it gives you that wiggle room, right? Instead of trying to average down and then you're not going to close break even because you're already in the wrong mindset of trying to get gains if that's the action you're doing, right? Where that break even of your initial trade might be where that risk off needs to occur on your secondary entry, right?
Move my arrows.
Yeah, exactly. But once again, just like understanding, can we rebid this? No? Okay, I'm going to target bottom of range. Take off size. You want to leave a runner? Leave a runner. That's fine, right? You don't need to. It feels good to capture the acceleration, but if you're struggling on these days, the acceleration is not what you should be attempting to capture.
This
Play the
20,
structure. Go
sorry.
ahead.
No, this 25 was also that Tuesday value low on NQ off of
Yep.
the failure at value high that I was talking about. It's like you have confluence on both of them popping here, but like it doesn't mean anything unless we can reclaim POC and then value high above that, or we're just trapped in this auction now. This previous auction. And what Mario was just bringing up, I think it's something to add. What I talked about earlier today, it's like you have a narrative, you have an idea of what you want, but then we trade for 40 minutes in a 5-point range. And now it's like, do I add to that position? Do I stay in this position where I'm waiting for a range break and I'm not taking profit at the high and the low and I'm building this position and I'm adding more contracts? It'll happen, it'll happen, it'll happen. And then like you're on the wrong side of the trade and you haven't given yourself the room to adapt because you already entered without waiting for a participant to actually move the market in the direction that you thought. Right? We're still trading in a range. And it's like if you lock yourself into that, first of all, you're using so much mental capital just waiting for this trade to happen. And if you're adding size to that trade on every attempt into that low or that high, while we're just chopping sideways, waiting for someone to actually move the market, like by the time it actually happens, you are so, or it doesn't happen and it goes the opposite direction, you are so convinced and you've put so much mental energy into this play happening that you're not exiting. It will happen. That's what you're telling yourself. It will happen. Like, just wait. We had this conversation earlier at the highs, right at like 12:30, when we were chopping in a 1.5-point range on ES. Like the breakdown will happen, or the breakout will happen. You'll have an entry. The speed will increase when we break out, and then a direction is decided. You will get a reoffer. You will get a rebid, depending. Give yourself the flexibility and the ease of mind, right? Not locking yourself into a narrative.
I am going to pause here. Those were like the three big moves. Yes, in the last like hour we had another thing off of 20. but it's the exact same setup in a trend day. And if you invert this chart, it's the exact same look on a bullish trend day, right? And just instead of the offer coming down, you have the bid moving up. And the same thing's going to happen where you're going to trade into an area that is of past interest, and you're not going to get the lift, and we're going to trade through it. And you're going to sit there with your limits on the ask and get ran over. It's the exact same thing. Like this 47 example was so good, where like you can see people were just sitting here, but there was no real interest to trade there. There's just a bunch of people who are like, of course I'm going to buy yesterday's low, right? Like I have to buy yesterday's low. We're going to bounce there surely. And you can see all of this liquidity right on the low where people put their orders literally right there, and sellers were just like, thank you, sweet. Right? Finding these areas, understanding the mini auctions within the overall auction, understanding what actually needs to happen for a level to become supportive, for a reversal to occur, right? Waiting until we see an actual offside trader, right? Like this pocket here, and then the bid hold above, right? This gave great long side scalps. I mean, this is a 15-point range within, what is this? Like a 5-minute candle, a 10-minute candle if we're counting like down through here. There's so many points able to capture here. If you wait and understand auction, reclaim, take the long, where, trap buyers, come back down, take the short, where, low of range, right? Now, obviously, in practice and in execution, it's not that straightforward, okay? It's not hard, but it is very difficult. It's very simple, but it's also very difficult. And the more you can objectify mechanics within a trend, the more points you will actually capture, and you don't have to worry about, like Sig said, relying on some guy to just slam it at the right point. Like that's fun. It feels great. The dopamine rush is huge. Woohoo, we did it. We caught the big move. But that's not really over time how you're going to be successful, because you're not going to catch every big move. You're not. I don't. Right? But I can trade mechanically within the big move. And these type of setups occur on a balance day as well, right? Like this structure right here could be a full day of action. And if you just wait for these offside participants on the edges on a balanced day, right, you can make those longer rotations. You can understand, can we trade through, back through a structure? Okay, yes, we're going to trade into our structure above then, or below, right? It's harder on those days to look for like lower high, trade back through auction, we should put lower low, right? Like that type of mentality is much more of an aggressive trade with trend involved. You still do hear me call those on a lot of normal days where it's like we make a liquidity search out of structure, it accepts, okay, we need to put a higher high in here kind of idea. But understanding where are people off sides, right? Is there strength to untrap? Do we have kind of a rogue trader doing something? If yes, and size is significant, cool, we have a pivot in range. Trade around him, right? If he's getting punished, punish him. If he's succeeding, trade with him. And the more we can get that type of mentality down, understanding where participants are, where they find value, and are those individuals correct, all you got to do. You can capture lots and lots and lots of points over time. Any final comments, questions, concerns? Hopefully today was helpful, kind of breaking this down. I highly recommend you guys go and slow this down. Go into replay mode yourself if you have it, and really look at these areas, because you will start to see the idea of what does the offer lowering look like? What does the bid raising look like? What does it look like when someone's off sides, right? And if you can identify those basically 4 things within a higher time frame structure that makes sense, right? Whether that's important levels reversion levels, right? Previous day lows, highs, previous day value areas, node structure. You're looking for the same trigger within all of these different playbook setups. Hopefully that makes sense. Like I said, are there any overall kind of questions? For those of you who don't normally hang out with us or are new, welcome. Hopefully you guys took something away from this. I saw the couple requests, so I will post. I'll post the JSON link for this setup. This is not the Tradeovate setup I use on a daily basis. It's most of it. I don't use the charts. I use Tradeovate or Trading View charts. Excuse me. I'll post that setup as well if people want it. It's basically just DOM tape and a footprint.
They probably honestly just want your footprint. If I was,
yeah.
yeah.
The footprint is very straightforward. There's only a couple indicators. I mean, I'll run through it really quick. This dead simple reversal, I do not get much use out of. I honestly should take it off. It's kind of just there because I'm lazy. VPOC per bar is awesome. Stacked imbalances help, and then the price axis, so your delta by price is the most useful thing on this entire chart for me, which I love. But yeah, I'll share this.
Does anyone have the list of the if-then statements before you get into a trade that I made forever ago in their playbook?
It might be pinned.
I don't know, but like it's the same stuff that Mario was talking about, but just from like a price action perspective. But like, think about if you're just trying to buy a dip because it's a green candle, have you done the work that is necessary for you to have an active trade plan? Like, you need the if-then statement of like, if a buyer is here, what am I looking for and how do I enter? What am I looking for after we see an active buyer? Well, what do they need to do for me to care about this price action, for this to be a higher low, for this to be a potential reversal, right? Like, remind yourself that you're a one-lot warrior and you don't control the market. So until you see exactly what you need to see for your playbook, for your plan to play out, you shouldn't be looking to put size on, to leverage, to put anything on, because you don't have an active plan and an active invalidation. You don't have an understanding of what's going on, right? So there's no reason for you trying to nab the literal low or the literal high. You need to wait for a participant to show their hand, for that speed to step in, and then watch for the reoffer or the rebid, because you don't have the size to move the market. And if you don't have the knowledge yet, be able to read the DOM effectively, to read tape effectively, to read footprint effectively, then there you have no business in trying to play a small counter trend scalps in the opposite direction of the overall trend, because you don't have what you need in place to have a solid trade plan, right? So again, it's like, find your levels, find previous areas of value, understand where we could go, where we are, who's in current control, right? Understand the invalidation level. You need to have at least a general sense of these things if you want to, first of all, try to catch a reversal, but also understand like, where are sellers going to reoffer in our current trend. Like, we are clearly in a gigantic sell, and all of the previous, quote unquote value levels from previous days, we just shot right through them. What do we say on an FOMC day? All short-term value, all short-term levels become insignificant. What caused our market topping? Well, we had Fed speakers telling us that we're going to have multiple rate hikes, right? That it's basically guaranteed at this point. So it's the same kind of thing as FOMC. All of your small short-term levels become insignificant, and you have to take a step back and see that this volatility is clearly someone in a higher time frame who is reacting to that news, and your levels that are on the 1 minute chart just are meaningless. We're seeing those reactions, they're meaningless. And so it's like, okay, well, if all of our previous day balances that we've done that got us up to that high are showing zero interest, zero buy side interest, or even maybe a little bit of buy side interest, but immediately they're put off sides, like, we need to not then look to buy a dip. Like clearly there's a shift in the market. If yesterday's value doesn't hold, if the day before that's value doesn't hold, if last week's value isn't holding, it's like, okay, well, clearly all of these little smaller auctions that took place do not have a ton of merit right now. Like you need to be able to recognize that. It's like, okay, well, where are our higher time frame levels? Where are we looking to go? If buyers no longer find value at any of the days that we've been trading for the last week, where are potential higher time frame levels where they might be interested in? And then let's mark that. And it's then once we get to those areas, we have if then statements. If buyers show interest, I'm looking for X, right? If I see that secondary move happen, I then can look to initiate. Like you need to remind yourself that if we're not seeing any sort of care, like the market will continue to fall until buyer value is found. Selling will occur until buyers deem that the low. Just like buyers will buy until sellers show that they deem that the high. You have an auction. There are two sides, right? If buyers aren't interested, they're not interested. Your magic line doesn't mean anything. You have one lot. Wait for someone who cares and who has size to show significance, and then have an if-then statement of how to react with them, right?
I still think the best and greatest example of that is this in the yesterday's low.
Yeah, I mean,
Like
that's a great one.
you can obviously see that like there were people were just sitting here and the sellers were like, "Thank you for the liquidity."
Yeah, I think 65 was also a great example because it's like if we don't care about yesterday's value after this large move up, 65 25 was yesterday value low on RTH. We had filled our gap at 70.50 on ES on the overnight. We then dipped below that. We then broke below yesterday's value low. So what is that telling us? We either need to reclaim yesterday's value low, show a supportive bid above, and then show any sort of care to fill back up the gap. If we don't see that, there's nothing. We don't care about yesterday's value. So like that's our buyer is now where our seller is sitting. Until we reclaim that, there's no reason to look for more upside. Zero reason. And I said as much in chat. It's like we need to recover our overnight gap fill for upside. 65 is the first look for my seller, is what I said in chat. And it was drawn on chart at the same time. But that's why. It's like if we can't even recover yesterday's value low, if buyers aren't interested below yesterday's value, if they don't see this as a huge discount opportunity to trade back up, think about it like this. If we break below value and then we see a buyer step in below value and then bring us back up and then rebid that value level, they just found the greatest dip buy opportunity of their life, and then they'll trade that back up. If we don't see that happening and that value is just our offer, right? It stays resistance. What is that telling us? They have no interest, or there wasn't enough interest. There's more selling interest, right? So if we don't care about that, then like if they don't care about it, then we shouldn't care about it either. We wait for the reaction, the recovery of the level, the rebid off of it, and then the push up, because there's defined risk there. We know if we're trading below a value low, we look for an offer to be sitting there until we recover that value low as supportive. There's no long. It's this. Nothing's changed. We don't need to be the dip buy that buys below value low. We can be the guy who buys on the retest of value, right? And then we can trade back up to the POC and then the value high. We have a structured area to trade around once an auction has been reclaimed. Of course, that auction being between value low and value high. If their buyers don't have interest in that auction, right? And the sellers do at the low, then we will get continuation down until value is found on buy side. Does that make sense? But there's no like, this isn't new. This is how you trade PVZ. This is how you trade a regular profile. But like it needs to be like, this should be like the foundation of your trading. If buyers don't show interest and sellers do at a level that you thought was supposed to be important, you better look for a reoffer there. The auction has shifted. if what you thought was clearly supply or demand was not, and we push right through it, and then we look back in and immediately see the other side showing increased activity, you better look at that level as as a continuation play, right? Like, we're gonna keep going down. That buyer is offsides, sellers are winning, they're still in control, keep going down.
I don't have much more for you guys today. I guess like my final statement with that is it's really easy to get in your head and feel like you didn't hold something long enough or you missed a trade today. Um, Understand that even like this example Sig just went over a ton. If you can recognize this and get this, like you're making 10 points per contract in 2 minutes. And you should be really happy about that. And just focus on your setups, regardless of what the day brings. If it's balanced, right? If it's trending, does not matter. The more you can trade the same thing every day in all markets, that's called consistency. And consistency is what P&L actually comes from. I preach all the time. Execution precedes your P&L. P&L is a byproduct, right? P&L should never be the goal. If it is, you've lost the plot. You're already losing. I'm sorry, it's true. Like, your P&L comes from good execution. And there are many people in chat who have became successful full-time traders where it proves that statement, right? The P&L is purely a byproduct of proper execution, because executing properly means you're not on the wrong side of a lot of trades, right? And the more you eat, just a little bit, you get full quickly, and you do it every day. And that's the real goal. So these days are easy to beat yourself up, be like, NQ moved 500 points. It's like, okay, who cares? That's not what you're here to care about. You're here to care about how you're executing within those frameworks. So I don't have anything else for you. Like I said a little bit ago, I hope people took a decent chunk away from this in terms of psychology as well as just like structural setups within trend. And not being afraid of the trend, not even thinking I missed it, because there's, and I talk about this a lot as well, I hate this idea of I missed a trade or I didn't hold long enough or etc., whatever you want to copium yourself into believing. There is only executing within a structure and executing within a playbook setup in that structure. And if you do that, you win forever. That's it. And you will always eat, right? It's looking for the Wagyu steak at the $2 Chinese buffet is not going to work very well for you, right? So yeah, I got nothing else. Any final comments, questions, concerns, words of wisdom? Thank you for everyone who's new. I hope to see you guys back. Any final words, statements?
That's it.
All right, guys. Well, I will see you guys tomorrow for, well, who knows what Friday is going to look like after today. But we'll be here. And we will be trading. All right, friends. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Goodbye.
See you all tomorrow at 9:30 a.m.
I will get those Trade Evade links posted, by the way. I'll put them into intraday. All right, adios.
Nick, the VOD will be up, and we can go over it a bit more tomorrow, but we want to keep classes pretty concise on stuff that we already talked about. I will be live tomorrow. We can go over it a bit more, or you can just rewatch the VOD at that time when he was talking about it. I will see you guys all tomorrow, And the link to his footprint will be posted in Discord. Discord link can be found in the description. You guys have a good one. Peace.